What's in a name? Choosing a name for a piece of art is a delicate thing. It's often the first thing a potential audience ever sees, and in doing so sets their reactions and expectations for what's about to come. Sometimes they're designed to evoke specific emotions, like the exhortations to war and glory held in titles like Call of Duty or Medal of Honor. Others prompt a promise of mystery or adventure, such as the fantasy stylings of The Legend of Zelda or Dragon Quest. The minds of your audience is the kind of thing advertising and publishing relies on. What I love about today's subject, however, is that it simply tells you precisely what you're in for with no real frills. You can't get that much clearer than Super Lesbian Animal RPG. There's very evidently a layer of influence drawn from the golden age of JRPGs on the Super Nintendo. It's about animal folk. Most of them are gay. And it's an RPG. What more could you need? Well, alright. It's a pretty good game as well. You're listening to the almighty Backlog. I'm Ellie, and today's review is on Super Lesbian Animal RPG, available for the PC, originally released in December of 2022, developed and published by Ponett. It's an RPG, obviously, and How Long to Beat has an average playtime of about 17 hours. If you've followed this blog any length of time, you might well have gotten a sense of the kind of person I am, politically speaking. Certainly, I've tried to make it clear in relevant reviews that I want to uplift and celebrate games which are loud and proud about being positive, affirming, and queer. I don't exactly go out of my way to find games that are LGBTQ centric, but obviously I do like to come across games that make me feel valid. I think we all do that, whether overtly or not. We want games that affirm our existence, in whatever strand that might be. That means that when a game like Super Lesbian Animal RPG comes around, it's impossible to resist playing. As you can guess from the title alone, it's unapologetically queer, and it loves to celebrate it. As a traditionally styled JRPG, it has the extra appeal to me as a person that prefers gaming on my own as a personal escapism. The choice to have it draw inspiration from titles like Earthbound is perfect for a nostalgia obsessive like myself. About the only line of appeal that I don't get to draw between me and the game is that I'm not a furry. All that stuff is vital. It's not just about matching the things in games that I like, it's about getting to see oneself expressed in and by a work of art. We sadly live in an age of wildly disseminated hatred, both for people like myself and other minorities. But it's also a hate against any kind of wider representation, and ultimately a hate against analysis and education in relation to art. There are views constantly and consistently expressed online about how games like this one ought not to exist, that they spread debauched ideas or some other farcical sense of wrongthink in the eyes of its opponents. It means that games like Super Lesbian Animal RPG become far more important than ever, and so preserving them and showing them off becomes of greater significance. It helps, of course, that the characters here are fantastically well-rounded. Take, for example, the game's protagonist, Melody. She's a trans girl, one of the rare few in a primary role in a game that I've seen. For some games, that would be all the characterization necessary, as if reducing her down to a singular label constitutes writing. But that's not what Super Lesbian Animal RPG has to offer. Much of this game's story is built around Melody's journey of self-actualization. She spends most of the plot trying to project an air of confidence and competency, but it's a thin facade hiding a scared and unsure young woman caught up in the wake of her girlfriend's adventuring career and teetering as she attempts to keep up. That she is trans is treated as, well, not an afterthought, but just only one part of the grander whole that is Melody. That level of depth goes for the rest of the cast too, with each of the rest of the main party, Melody's punky punch-first ask-questions-later girlfriend Allison, chaotic mage Claire, and the collected, experienced fighter Jodie, getting little moments throughout that push them and their character arcs to the forefront. That said, this isn't a lengthy game, clocking in at around 16 to 17 hours long. I promise that's short for a turn-based RPG. So the character writing and focus spots are condensed by necessity. There aren't really many wasted words here. Every interaction tries to add colour to the cast and either showcase or advance some sort of personal arc. I suppose that's the thing with indie projects. You've not got infinite time, money, or patience when developing a game on your own or as part of a small self-led team, so you're incentivized to prioritize brevity. It's an RPG, so obviously the plot has the expected fantasy elements and a grand world-threatening villain to defeat, but really the game is far more about relationships, the work they take, and the tolls they can or must overcome. Lead character Melody opens the game by picking to study the path of the Paladin, learning healing magic, specifically to help her girlfriend Allison, who wants to be an adventurer. Unfortunately for the pair of them, they live in the sleepy forest town of Greenridge, and it's already very well protected by a local Paladin brigade, so Allison instead settles on forming a guild, dragging Melody along with her. Ostensibly, it's an excuse for Allison to punch small-time monsters. She's joined by an eclectic witch called Claire who has an unfortunate tendency to cast spells that damage the town, and Jody, a shield-wielding guardian who mostly seems to be here to pick the others out of trouble. Things go wrong when the gang accidentally stumbles onto a strange, otherworldly being attempting to force its way into their world and reshape it with terrifying, glitchy effects. They give chase, obviously, but doing so slowly begins to pile pressure onto them and their loved ones, and I particularly enjoy how the game uses a somewhat smaller scope to instead laser in on the effect their quest has on them personally. All too real insecurities are brought to the fore and examined. Melody battles with anxieties over her place in the party and a lack of self-worth stemming in part from not feeling like she's fully in control of her life. Allison struggles with an inferiority complex thanks to her successful mother. Jody struggles with balancing her need to save everyone against guilt over what this does to her relationship, and Claire buries a deep-seated angst beneath layers of self-protective sarcasm and a bossy studiousness that leaves her at arm's length from the people she loves the most and unable to articulate it. What this results in is a game that is acutely aware of the issues that often plague the LGBTQ+ community, expressed in a thoughtful and caring way. Of course, it's not all just great writing in Super Lesbian Animal RPG, there's also a very fun traditional RPG in there as well. Earthbound in particular seems to have been a fairly substantial influence, given that the battle scenes take place against some truly demented and creative enemies that range from weird dogs poking out of holes in the ground to a JPEG of a cheap Gandalf cosplay. Perhaps the more modern point of comparison for this is Undertale, but I'm a child of the 90s. I kinda love the enemies in this game. There's truly a wonderful sense of imagination to many of the designs, but equally it's balanced out against some stuff that could come from a sweet Pokemon knockoff or from a kooky DS-era urban fantasy. Some of them, like the aforementioned JPEG Wizard, have what I can only describe as a cheapness to them, but that's not a complaint. There's something very refreshing about it, and it is also simply very funny. The party are also a little bit unconventional in their roles. You don't often see a main character in an RPG that is expressly a healer, but that's Melody's role through and through. You get to pick one of 3 subclasses of Paladin at the beginning of the game, which will somewhat dictate what kind of a healer she is. I opted for a Woodland Paladin, which sounded a bit druidic or ranger-y, and as expected, many of her healing spells then became nature-themed. Allison is the perfect complement to Melody in battle as a pure damage dealer, and Claire falls into a fairly straightforward role as a caster of offensive spells. But then Jody is a bit of a curveball in that her job is mainly focused around attack redirection and defending the others from damage. Each of these roles also earns star power for doing their thing. Melody gets hers by healing, Allison's by punching, Claire by casting, and Jody by soaking up damage. Star power, in turn, then gets used to access each character's most powerful abilities, so you get that pleasant balance of deciding whether to use your turn building it up, spending some of it on lower powered but quicker to access attacks, or saving it up for a big whammy. Enemies hit hard enough that you can't just spam basic attacks, not that that would do much anyway, as the characters are specialised enough into their chosen roles that neither Melody nor Claire hit for any appreciable damage for much of the game, so combat winds up just challenging enough that you'll do far better for planning your turns ahead, a tactic which is especially true for the game's boss fights. The other cool string to Super Lesbian Animal RPG's bow are the spellbooks. Each character gets access to some standard actions in battle by default. We're talking the usual stuff like attacking or skills or defending, but during the game you'll also come across equipable spellbooks. Each one of these magical tomes contains specialist arcane knowledge, and therefore whoever in your party equips one gets access to niche spells that can't be learned just by levelling up. The most basic of these start with things like healing magic or water spells, giving you the obvious options of loading up Melody and Claire to better their options in battle, or by spreading them around to the team to widen your pool of available healers and casters in case anything happens to the team mages. However, later ones get much more esoteric. For example, I liked having the Chronomancy spellbook in Melody's hands, allowing her to begin battles by casting spells that buffed the team's speed and mangled the enemies. She was then bolstered by Jodie also getting spells to help the party, while Claire and Allison used ones that were basically just more suited to their chosen classes in order to push the team's damage output into deadly territory. Oh yes, we shouldn't forget to mention the most important aspect to combat. Each character can give their girlfriend a big ol' smooch, which gives them a raft of helpful stat bonuses for a few turns. The game tracks how much kissing you do, by the way. It's a sapphic game and it's damn proud of it. In fact, the need to lock lips with their partner is so powerful in this game that, in the event of characters being separated by the plot, it can in fact summon them to the field solely for the purpose of having a great big kiss. Look, some games are queer celebrations by virtue of their writing, or the way they portray LGBTQ+ existence, or simply in the themes they build on. Some games are queer because they're about giving your girlfriend a kiss. Lots and lots of times. I mean, in fairness, Super Lesbian Animal RPG is the former as well, it's just also very much the latter. I'd had my eye on playing Super Lesbian Animal RPG for a good long while, and I'm very pleased to say it was worth getting around to. If you're simply into old school RPGs, there's a lot to enjoy, but life as an LGBTQ+ person is so deeply ingrained into the game's writing that it presumably functions at its best when you can see elements of your own existence in it. That's not to say you can't enjoy this as a cis straight person, obviously that would be a very ludicrous assertion, but there's no escaping just how proud this game is of being a celebration of being queer. Beating up dimension-threatening monsters is just a bonus. The final score is 6 out of 7. Excellent. Games that have a touch of brilliance. It might only just miss out on being an absolute favourite, but you should definitely play this. This has been Ellie on the Almighty Backlog. You can support this project by reading the review over on thealmightybacklog.wordpress.com, or by listening to the pod review hosted on RSS and YouTube. Please feel free to follow me over on Mastodon, Blue Sky and/or Backlogged by following the links on the website, backlog@gmail.com, or by hitting the donate button on the blog. Thanks for listening, and have a lovely day.